to Natalie's Reptile Room. Today, the host Natalie,
co-host Kevin,
special guest here
is the Nile.
Now.
So today, guys, we are getting back into our pros and cons series. Do you remember which one we did last time?
Yeah.
Who?
Savannah?
We did the Savannah Monitor pros and cons, which if they want to watch it, they can watch it right where?
Right there.
Right there. So as you guys can see from our special guest here today,
Hi.
today's pros and cons video is on the Nile Monitor. And
Yeah.
what do you think of this little guy?
I think he's pretty cute.
You think he's pretty cute? And then back a few months ago, we also did the full care video of the Nile Monitor. And if you guys want to watch that one, you can watch that right here.
Yep, right there.
That was and still is our most viewed care video. And knowing how many of you guys have watched that and given us likes and stuff like that for it, that means the world to me and Natalie. But today we are specifically talking about the goods and the bads of a pet Nile Monitor.
Yep.
And we'll tell you right up front, it's not the greatest.
Are you ready to get into it, Dad?
I'm ready to get into it. Let's do it.
Yep.
So in this video, we are gonna start with the cons, because when it comes to a Nile Monitor, we feel the cons are that much more important.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more of them.
And I'm holding it right now, guys.
Yep, very good. All right, let's start with the less serious cons. Con number one, they are expensive. We'll get more into the only part of them that isn't expensive in the pros, but they are a massive lizard that needs a massive enclosure, lots of expensive lighting, and also a lot of food.
Yeah.
A bare minimum enclosure for a Nile Monitor is going to be something 12 feet long. That's big. A lot of people with a pet Nile Monitor build them their own independent room that they have to use a whole room to house their Nile Monitor.
Yep.
For an enclosure that size, or probably less if you build something yourself, but buying an enclosure that size is easily going to cost you $1,000 or $2,000 right up front with only the enclosure. That's a lot of money. That's that's a green tree monitor.
Yeah.
All right, con number two. A large amount of Nile monitors on the market today are wild caught. This can lead to a number of difficulties. One is making them more difficult to tame, more on that later. They can come with parasites, diseases, less likely to eat, that kind of stuff. And that's not good.
Yeah.
And that leads into con number three, taming and their reluctancy of being handled. Nile monitors are incredibly stubborn lizards, incredibly stubborn. Being wild caught can intensify that, but that goes for captive bred as well. Natalie and I have experience with a few monitor species, and hands down, he's been the most difficult, the Nile Monitor, but you can find plenty of other people that have many different species of monitor lizards that will tell you a Nile Monitor is one of the most difficult. And with that, con number four, the sheer amount of time and effort that you need to put into a Nile Monitor. In the lizard taming video that Natalie and I did, we went over the sheer amount of time and effort and work you need to put into taming a lizard. Nile monitors need all of it. They need a lot of time.
Yeah, and guys, they do need a lot of stuff and a lot of accessories in the enclosure.
Yes, yes they do. We are talking like years plus, depending on each individual lizard's temperament, but it's gonna take a long time. And when we get into the more serious cons, you'll see why taming a pet Nile Monitor, if you get one, is an absolute must. When we get into the more serious cons.
Yeah, they're not a boil. They don't climb walls. They don't climb glass.
They're not like a sticky gecko.
Yep, they aren't a sticky gecko, no hairs.
That's just getting them to the point that they don't bite you every time you take them out of the enclosure, or just try to flee as soon as you take them out.
Yeah.
That's the taming part. There will be times that you're working with them like day in, day out, and it's gonna feel like, man, we're really starting to build a bond. He's really starting to trust me. And then the very next day, it'll be like all that taming went straight out of the window. It's consistency. You have to consistently work with them.
Yeah, so every single morning, you have to train them.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, and time to get into the more serious cons. Con number 5, they get massive. They are actually the largest lizard in Africa, and that's saying something. With full-grown adult Nile monitors getting up to 5.5 and 6 feet. That's huge.
Yeah.
5.5 to 6 feet.
Yeah, and that's big ol', that's probably...
It's about as Daddy is tall. Like if I laid down, he'd be that long. Big. But all you guys have to do is Google it. You can actually find videos online of Nile monitors going toe-to-toe with like the African lion. Like they're sitting there defending themselves, hissing, huffing and puffing, whipping lions with their tail.
Yeah.
And if it's little old you and they feel like they need to defend themselves, if they'll defend themselves from a lion, they'll defend themselves from you.
Yeah.
Especially when they get that size to them.
Yeah.
That's a confidence builder.
And they get about like 5 or 4 feet.
5.5 to 6 feet.
5.5 to 6 feet.
That's big.
Yeah, that's bigger.
Mm-hmm.
That's bigger than that.
Oh yeah, way bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to con number 7. Is they have several ways of defending themselves if they feel they need to defend themselves.
Yeah.
One is their claws. For you handling them, their claws will tear you up unless you keep their nails trimmed. And that's even as a baby like this. Like when he's crawling on me, I can feel those nails digging in when I haven't trimmed them. You can feel it. And that's not even intentionally. That's just them trying to crawl around on you and even exploring. But totally unintentionally, they'll tear you up.
Yeah.
The other weapon is their tail. In those same videos of them fighting back lions, that'll show you exactly how powerful their tail is. And if you look at his tail, it's not like your Savannah monitor where it's kind of like big and short. This is a whip-like tail. That's like a whip. And I mean, they'll certainly use it.
Yeah. So like,
Pretty much. And the last weapon, and con number 7, their bite. This is probably the most serious con. Natalie and I feel like people will sometimes really over-exaggerate like how bad a bite from a reptile is. Like they'll show you a picture of a green tree python yawning and they'll be like, this could end your life. That's not true.
yeah.
And am I gonna say that a Nile monitor bite can kill you? There was the story of, remember Ronald Huff, where he was eaten by Nile monitors, but I mean, that was incredibly circumstantial. Incredibly. There's a lot of things that he did wrong.
What? Like what?
Like, remember, he didn't just have one, he had 6 of them. They were just roaming his house, didn't even have them in cages.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that if a full-grown Nile monitor bit a small child like this, let's say on the wrist, and they started like aggressively pulling and twisting, I mean, that could very easily turn life-threatening for a small child.
Yeah.
Very easily.
What?
And they do not let go. And I'm not saying it's like a croc monitor bite. They don't have the jaws of like a croc monitor, but those are big jaws, big teeth, and could easily...
Like he has that big of a teeth?
No, not that big.
That?
No. But that could easily send you to the hospital for stitches. And on to our final con number 8. Defensive and aggressiveness. Natalie and I brought up in our Nile Monitor video that we feel that there are some species of animals that are just naturally more aggressive than others. Naturally. But we feel there are lizard species that are more aggressive than others, snakes that are more aggressive than others. Heck, even cats and dogs that are more aggressive than others. And we honestly feel like Nile monitors are in that category.
And guys, they'll bite with hurt really bad, and those things can go right through your finger.
They'll break the skin, that's for sure. Even as a baby, when he did bite me, he hasn't bit me in a long time. But even as a baby, when he did bite me, it would break the skin. So not one you'd want from a full-grown one. We already brought up their apprehensiveness of being handled. Most of them don't like being handled, but you will also notice other things of like cage defensiveness, where if you try to pick them up, they're gonna hiss, huff and puff, try to tail whip you. They'll do all that.
Yeah.
So they let you know when they don't want to be bothered.
Yeah, and when they don't want to be bothered, they'll be like,
He does that weird puffing thing.
yeah, he'll be like,
As babies, they're much more likely to just try to run. They prefer flight, but when they get some size to them, they'll turn to fight. All right, with all of the cons out of the way, let's get into the pros. Pro number one, there is no denying that they are a beautiful and impressive lizard. They absolutely are. I feel they're the coolest out of like your most common monitors, like mangrove monitors, Asian water monitors, savanna monitors. I think Niles are the coolest looking.
Yep, and guys, his prettiness is so pretty.
He is a very pretty lizard, ain't he? So this is obviously only my personal opinion, but I think there's only two monitors that beat them in beauty and coolness. He's just chilling. But that is the green tree monitor and the lace monitor. Yeah. Those are the only two monitors I hold above him.
Yeah.
And we don't have either of them.
And guys, you might want to get but guys,
Ackie monitor.
Yep, guys, one of you got that right.
Oh yeah, somebody on our page got that right.
Yep. On your first try.
However, beauty and coolness should not trump practicality, right?
Yeah.
And pro number two, they are cheap. People sell Nile monitors, they are cheap and they are readily available. Yeah. Almost every reptile show we've ever been to, we've seen them there. You can find them online and they're usually less than $100. Yeah. However, as we mentioned in the cons, that is the only thing that is going to be cheap about them. But they are incredibly easy to get. And in a way, a little too easy to get. A channel that Natalie and I started recently following is Dino Dave's.
Who's Dino Dave's?
I'll show you the video, but I really appreciate, he did a video where he basically goes to these vendors at reptile shows and tries to see if they just push Nile monitors on anybody that they can just to sell him, or if they're upfront with the buyer and they explain like, look, a Nile monitor isn't really a beginner reptile, this is something for more advanced. But I absolutely agree with his premise, and I also agree that, that should be explained to somebody, but you want them to be upfront to tell, like, if a kid comes in, you want to be able to tell them up front, like, look man, this lizard may not be for you, it gets 6 feet long, they usually have a little temper. That should be disclosed, like, up front.
Yeah, and guys, Nile monitors really aren't for kids.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Good answer. And at the end of the day, that's just putting a sale before the well-being of the buyer and the animal.
Yeah.
If they don't do it that way.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what this is doing is these novice keepers are buying a Nile monitor They raise them for a few months to a year, realize how big they get, realize how expensive they get, and we're running into the issues that, like down in Florida, that people are releasing a Nile monitor into Florida where they can actually thrive. But that hurts the reptile hobby, the reptile community very, very badly.
Yeah.
You cannot release animals in the wild,
Yeah.
captive animals.
Yeah.
And to our final pro number 3. Usually they are great eaters and their diet.
Spit on you?
No.
No.
But usually they are great eaters and have a relatively simple diet. As we've mentioned in plenty of our previous videos, Daddy says this a lot, it can be very stressful for a pet owner having an animal that won't eat. And this is never usually an issue. However, I've heard some other people mention that once their female monitor gets into their teens, they will go off of food for short periods of time.
5 days. Then they'll fight together.
Housing multiple of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if your baby or juvenile Nile monitor isn't eating, that's probably a good sign it was wild caught and they either have some kind of parasites, diseases, or are just overly stressed. But how does this guy do with eating?
Good. And guys, we had no problem with him eating.
Which sometimes they're almost too good of eaters, where you're definitely at risk for like an accidental bite. You can watch people feeding them, taking their food like around the enclosure, and I mean they're going wild, all out to get whatever they're feeding them. So you got to be very careful of how you feed them so you don't take a accidental bite either.
Yeah, and guys, do not put your finger right in their face.
Yeah.
When they are eating.
Oh, yeah.
And then they might miss and then bite your finger.
That's just asking for it.
Yeah.
But as babies and juveniles, their entire diet can be found at any pet store. At major pet stores, their diet as babies and juveniles is readily available. But as they get bigger, their diet gets bigger. They gotta eat bigger things, like fish, eggs, rodents, I don't know if you guys have been to the grocery store recently and seen how much fish costs nowadays, but that can get pretty expensive too.
Yeah.
Alright guys, and that does it for our Nile monitor pros and cons. As you can see, we finished with many more cons than pros. Nile monitors simply are not for everyone. They are not a beginner reptile. They are not a reptile for beginners.
Yep. And they're not for kids.
Not for kids.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
And
owning one.
Yeah, owning one.
If I supervise you with him as a baby, I'm okay with that. But when he becomes an adult, like I said in other videos, I'm either going to be 100% sure he would never bite you, or you just simply won't interact with him.
Yeah, or I'd just be like, I'm not going to hold him. I'm not going to hold him because he might bite.
Right. They are one of the most difficult monitor lizards to tame. They are incredibly expensive and can cause some serious damage to their owner. In my personal opinion, Nile monitors make one of the worst picks for a pet reptile. I feel they are not for the overwhelming majority of people. To me, there is absolutely no shame in saying, you know what, this animal is too much. I can't handle this, I'm not going to get one.
Yeah.
That is the best route you can take.
Yeah.
Natalie and I both really hope this video helps you to make an informed decision of whether you're going to get a Nile monitor or not, or at the very least makes you want to research more before you end up getting one, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal of these pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any information that we missed or any information that you guys can think of, make sure to leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, make sure to give us a
huge thumbs up.
Huge thumbs up. and consider subscribing for more of our reptile content. Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Bye, guys.
Bye.